Hello, this is Aris Katz, CEO of Lucena Research, and today I'm going to walk you through several functions of our cloud-based research platform called QuantDesk. In this video, I'm going to showcase how we utilize our backtesting functionality to validate the performance of the portfolio after we've evaluated it on a piece-by-piece, point-in-time basis. So here it is. We have our first portfolio. We've created that portfolio on our first video, and now we're going to backtest it over time. So again, we're going to move into the backtest functionality right here, choose our hedge option from the backtest functionality menu, and you can see here a wizard that walks us through all the input variables to ensure we have a proper backtest. Let's move on through the various steps. We can choose our portfolio and identify the time frame that we are trying to test the functionality of hedging and optimizing the portfolio. We'll start in January 1st, 2016 and end on this Friday, July 6, 2018. The name of the backtest, and we can select the option to optimize before we hedge, which is what we've done on the first video. We optimized first and then we hedged subsequent to the optimization. So optimize first, and if you recall, we had optimized for a moderate risk level and using a long-only portfolio with a 1 to 25 min-max allocation guidance. The next step would allow us to select the security basket from which to choose our hedge positions, and we can repeat that process every 4 weeks. So again, we are going to hedge the portfolio and optimize it every 4 weeks. Again, the hedge goals will be to preserve return. We'll use a long only for the hedge type, and we'll select 20 positions to compose the hedge based on 20 positions from the S&P 500. Again, we're done with the data entry. You can see here the summary of the hedge setup as well as the optimize setup. And once it's all confirmed and validated, we're ready to go and select the backtest button, and the machine goes to work. Now, the first piece of the backtest is what we would call hyperparameter search. The system kind of runs for a short period of time and tries 9 configurations of look back and forward forecasting periods to identify which configuration for the hedger and the optimizer works really well in that short time frame. At that point, it carries that configuration all the way through to the remaining portion of the backtest. So you can see here it's doing 3 iterations for every single configuration type. It's almost done. You can see it's at the 24-minute mark or 24 cycle mark. It goes to 31, and then it'll generate the complete performance report for us to evaluate really and truly how the system performed, not in isolation by itself, but also in comparison to the benchmark. In our case, we are comparing to the S&P 500. So last step is the machine generates the performance report of the backtest, and we can see the results on the screen displayed momentarily. Okay, so here is the result. You can see here at the summary table on the right side how the strategy performed relative to the S&P. You can see that we have a 53% return versus a 35% return, 53.08 against 35.97, almost 36%, but still much better performance on return, on Sharpe ratio. Even the max drawdown is much lower than the S&P 500. So we kind of achieved all 3 goals here: higher return, lower volatility, and a higher Sharpe ratio. You can see on the right side here also the transaction cost distribution and what the cost of the transaction and slippage and short borrowing, if we had any short positions, which we didn't have in this particular case. And of course, what is your batting average? 62.67% successful transaction, which is a pretty good ratio. In the image itself, you can see here 4 distinct graphs. The red line represents the hedge, the blue line represents the S&P 500, the green is the core holding, and the orange represents the actual strategy that combines the hedge and the core holdings together. I can isolate some of the pieces here so it's easier to see. And here you go, we have the blue line represents the S&P 500 and the orange line by far outperforming both in lower volatility and in higher return. One last thing that I want to show you, we have a very nice representation of the same information through what we would call a backtest printable version of the report. This is a more detailed and version of the report that you can see how the performance actually evolves over time. You can see a year-by-year comparison here. Again, the summary of all the performance between the strategy and the benchmark. But more importantly, you can see as you scroll down, additional information such as correlation to sectors, beta correlation, as well as exposure graph, additional information that I'm not going to go through every single one of those data elements, but the most important thing is you can see on the bottom, you have a complete audit trail of all the transactions that yielded the results that are currently being presented. You can see the breakdown of the allocations of the positions over time through each and every cycle of rebalancing of that portfolio over time. Anyway, that's the end of my presentation. Thank you for listening and enjoy QuantDesk.